It started with petty fines, bogus violations, and empty threats. Then one morning, men showed up at Ethan Ward's front door, flashing badges and speaking with authority. They told Ethan, a black man who had chosen this neighborhood for peace and independence, that he was under arrest for violating HOA rules. What they didn't know was that Ethan was a United States Marshal. Brenda Miller wasn't just any neighbor. She was the type of woman who lived to control others. Rules weren't enough for her. When she didn't have enough to enforce, she invented them. Ethan should have seen it coming from the very first encounter, but he had no idea just how far she would go. It began with a letter in his mailbox. The envelope was stiff, the HOA logo printed in shiny gold across the top like some official government seal. "Dear homeowner," it read, "you are required to register your property under the Cedar Hills HOA and comply with all community guidelines, including monthly dues and maintenance fees." Required. Ethan almost laughed. That was the entire reason he bought this house, because it wasn't tied to an HOA. On the second page, the nonsense continued. A $250 fine for failing to maintain property aesthetics. Ethan stepped outside, scanning his freshly mowed lawn, clean driveway, and neatly parked truck. What exactly was he failing to maintain? The letter went straight into the trash. But then another one came, and another. By the end of the week, Ethan's mailbox was overflowing with violations. $100 for unauthorized exterior changes. Nothing had been altered. $150 for noise disturbances. Ethan worked nights, he was hardly home. $200 for not submitting a landscaping plan, a rule he had never even heard of. Brenda wasn't enforcing rules. She was testing him, seeing if he would roll over. Ethan ignored every last notice. That's when she decided to change tactics. The next morning, Ethan stepped outside and froze. Brenda was standing in his driveway, clipboard in hand, eyes locked on him, like she'd been waiting. When their gazes met, she didn't flinch. She wanted him to know she was there. Ethan walked over slowly, leaning against his truck with his arms crossed. She checked her gold wristwatch, making a show of pretending he was late. "Oh, good," she said with a sugary smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I was hoping to catch you." Ethan didn't move. "Something you need, Brenda?" Flipping through her stack of papers, she plucked one free and held it up like it was a court summons. "Just here to remind you personally about the outstanding violations on your property. I noticed you haven't submitted any payments yet." Ethan barely glanced at it. "Brenda, I'm not part of your HOA." Her smile didn't fade. In fact, it grew sharper. "Well," she said in a syrupy voice, "Cedar Hills has certain expectations for the surrounding properties. It's only fair that everyone contributes." Ethan let out a humorless laugh. "Fair? Let me make this clear, Brenda. I don't answer to you. Stop stuffing my mailbox with this garbage. It's going straight into the trash." For just a second, the mask slipped. Her jaw tightened, her grip on the clipboard stiffened. Then she smoothed it over with another fake smile. "Well," she said, straightening her blazer, "I do hope you reconsider. You wouldn't want to make things difficult for yourself. Have you ever been pushed so far by someone abusing fake authority that they thought they could control you? What would you do if it happened to you? Before we go any further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe people like Brenda should never get away with this kind of harassment, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories that put bullies in their place. Ethan tilted his head. "That a threat?" She gave a breathy little laugh. "Oh, not at all. Just a friendly reminder. This community values cooperation." Ethan stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Here's my reminder. One more fake notice in my mailbox, and I'll be filing a harassment complaint. You can play queen of the HOA all you want, but you've got no authority over me." Her smile twitched. She didn't reply. Instead, she spun on her heel, walking down his driveway with her heels clicking against the pavement. Ethan shook his head, watching her go. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, Ethan found a pile of garbage dumped across his lawn. A week later, his mailbox was knocked over. Then the whispers started, neighbors muttering when he walked past, casting him sideways glances. At first, he thought he was imagining it, until he ran into Harold Tate at the gas station. Harold was an old-timer, a man who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. He didn't say much, but when he did, people usually listened. As Ethan pumped gas into his truck, Harold gave him a sympathetic look. "Hope you get things sorted out soon," Harold said. Ethan frowned. "Sorted out? What do you mean?" Harold sighed. "Brenda's been talking, telling folks you've got legal trouble, saying you're one of those problem homeowners who dodges responsibilities, even mentioned something about a warrant." Ethan blinked. "A warrant?" That was a new one. Harold shook his head. "You know how she is, HOA politics." Ethan thought about it on the drive home. This wasn't politics. And sure enough, the very next morning, a letter arrived marked final notice from the Cedar Hills HOA's so-called legal department. Inside was a bold, official-looking document. "Failure to comply with HOA policies will result in legal action. Please be advised that a warrant has been issued for your continued refusal to adhere to community guidelines." Ethan stared at the paper for a long moment, then laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. Brenda had finally lost her mind. She really thought she could scare him with a fake warrant. That's when it hit him. She wasn't going to stop. She was pushing harder, getting desperate. But what Brenda didn't know was that Ethan was a U.S. Marshal, and she had just picked a fight with the wrong man. He held the page up to the light, studying it. The formatting looked official, the wording sounded serious, but Ethan had seen real warrants. He had signed off on them himself. And this was laughable. There was no agency listed, no judge's name, no case number, no badge, just a signature at the bottom. Brenda Miller, HOA president. Brenda honestly thought she could intimidate him with this nonsense. Almost impressive in its stupidity, almost. Instead of reacting, Ethan leaned back at his desk, steepling his fingers. Brenda had escalated from petty harassment to outright fraud. He could have shut her down immediately with a cease and desist. But why waste the chance? Better to let her keep digging. So Ethan stayed quiet. He didn't storm down the street. He didn't confront her. He just waited. And sure enough, Brenda took the bait. The very next morning, Ethan stepped outside and saw it. A bold red warning taped right to his front door. Final warning. Failure to pay outstanding fines will result in arrest. Ethan let out a short snort. Brenda was really committing to the performance. He left the notice exactly where it was and went to work. By the time he got home, another had been taped up. The next day, 2 more. Brenda wanted him to see them. She wanted him to believe he was just a step away from being hauled off in cuffs. But Ethan knew better. That was never going to happen. Then Friday morning came. Ethan opened his door to find 2 men waiting in his driveway. Both wore mismatched uniforms with clipboards in hand and cheap plastic badges clipped to their belts. They stared at Ethan. He stared right back. Finally, one of them cleared his throat. "Are you the homeowner?" Ethan folded his arms. "Who's asking?" The taller one straightened his shoulders. "We're with the Homeowners Association Enforcement Division. We're here to discuss your outstanding violations." Ethan nearly laughed out loud. Homeowners Association Enforcement Division? Brenda had actually hired fake cops. "Is that so?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice level. The shorter man, stockier and trying hard to look tough, nodded. "We have an active warrant for your arrest." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Do you now?" The tall one held up his clipboard. "Per HOA code violations, you've repeatedly failed to comply with community regulations and have outstanding fines. We're here to bring you in." Ethan let the silence hang, then smiled. "All right, let's see the warrant." The shorter one blinked. "You already got the notice." "No," Ethan said, shaking his head slowly. "The real one. Show me the court-issued arrest warrant." The tall man shifted uncomfortably. "Well, the HOA board issued it." "Oh, the HOA board," Ethan said, nodding. "And tell me, does the HOA have the legal authority to issue arrests?" Both men hesitated, gears turning in their heads, trying to piece together an answer without sounding like fools. Ethan let them sweat before sighing. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his badge, not a flimsy fake, not something bought online, a real U.S. Marshal badge. He held it up between 2 fingers, letting them both get a good, long look. The instant they saw it, their faces drained of color. The tall man's mouth dropped open. The shorter one actually stumbled back a step. Ethan tilted his head, his voice calm but sharp. "You two just attempted to detain a federal officer." Silence. "I've got 2 questions for you," Ethan continued, still holding the badge steady in the sunlight. "First, where exactly is your authorization to conduct arrests?" Neither of them spoke. "Second, Would you like me to charge you with impersonating law enforcement before or after I run your names? That did it. The tall guy's clipboard clattered to the ground. The shorter one turned on his heel and sprinted down the street like his life depended on it. Ethan just stood there, arms crossed, watching them scatter like roaches under a light. He let them go. For now, because when Ethan ran their names, the truth floored him. They weren't real officers, not even licensed guards. They were part of a fake security outfit Brenda had built from scratch, and it went far beyond him. Digging into records and complaints, Ethan uncovered her entire operation. Target homeowners who refused to join, bury them in bogus fines, send in fake HOA police, then seize properties and resell them for profit. Families had actually lost their homes to this scheme. Worse, a local judge had been signing off on her shady foreclosures without question. Either he was bought or he didn't care. That was all Ethan needed. Proof Brenda's empire was nothing but fraud, and now he was ready to tear it down. Ethan held back, wanting to see just how far Brenda would go. So he baited her, sending a reply to one of her final notices that made him seem nervous, willing to negotiate. The next day, an email hit his inbox, a summons to an HOA arbitration hearing. No courthouse, no judge, just a date, a time, and a threat of consequences. Ethan almost laughed. Brenda was setting up her own fake courtroom. When Friday came, he arrived early in plain clothes. Brenda was already at the head of a table, clipboard, and a cheap wooden gavel in front of her. 3 board members sat behind her, trying to look official. Across from them, 2 homeowners she'd already targeted shifted uneasily. Her smug smile widened as Ethan walked in. "Glad you could make it," she said. He sat slowly, calm and steady. "Of course, wouldn't miss it." Brenda launched into her act, reading off bogus violations and inflated fines, her words dressed up with legal-sounding nonsense. Ethan wasn't listening, he was watching. The way her eyes flicked to the papers, the clock, the door. Finally, he cut in. "Let me guess," Ethan said, his voice smooth. "Your HOA police are about to walk in and escort me out?" Brenda froze. The board shifted. Her eyes darted to the door. Ethan smiled. "Thought so." Ethan checked his watch, then stood. "Before your fake officers show up," he said coolly, "let's bring in some real ones." Right on cue, the doors burst open. Uniformed officers stormed in, with the assistant U.S. attorney at their side, warrant in hand. "Brenda Miller, you are under arrest for fraud, extortion, impersonating law enforcement, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Brenda's face strained. "Wait, you don't understand." "Oh, we understand," Ethan said, arms crossed. "You tried to run a fake hearing and even sent imposters to arrest me. Bad move." She spun to the board. "Do something." But they backed away, leaving her alone. The cuffs clicked shut. Brenda screamed all the way out as flashing lights painted the walls. The fallout was swift. Within a week, the board was under investigation. Within a month, the Cedar Hills HOA was dissolved. Brenda fought in court, blaming everyone else, but the evidence buried her. The judge didn't give her a slap on the wrist. He sent her to prison. At last, Ethan had peace. No more harassment. If you believe no one, no HOA, no fake cop, no self-appointed queen, should ever have the power to strip people of their freedom, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. Because real justice doesn't bow to pretenders.